Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. I'm your family doctor, and I'm really glad you're here. I want to start with a question. Have you ever noticed something strange? You go to your doctor for a routine physical, you feel great, you've been exercising, you're eating reasonably well, you're keeping up with your kids or your grandkids, and you think, I'm doing just fine. Then you get your lab results back, and suddenly there it is, right there on the report in plain black and white: thyroid nodule. Breast nodule, lung nodule, uterine fibroid, one of those words that just stops you cold. And I want you to be honest with me. What's the first thing that goes through your mind when you see that? Your heart drops, doesn't it? Your hands go cold. Your stomach ties itself in a knot. And then almost immediately, your brain goes to that terrifying place. Is this cancer? And then what happens? You can't eat, you can't sleep. You start Googling everything at 2 in the morning, which is honestly the worst thing you can possibly do because the internet is full of terrifying stories that don't apply to you. Then you start making the rounds of specialists. You go see the surgeon. They look at your scan with that serious, heavy expression, like they're about to deliver a verdict that changes your whole life. And they say, well, this nodule is a little larger than we'd like. The borders aren't as clear as we'd prefer. There's some blood flow to be on the safe side. We should do a biopsy. We should remove it. And so you do. You sign the consent forms, you get wheeled into the operating room, and they cut out a piece of your tissue, and you think, okay, that's over, it's gone, I'm safe now. But here's what I've learned after seeing thousands of patients over the years. Are we really fixing the problem? Because think about it this way. If you have a garden and you pull out a weed, but you leave the soil exactly the same, still damp, still acidic, still full of exactly the same conditions that made that weed grow in the first place, what's going to happen? That weed is coming back, or a different weed is going to grow in its place. And that honestly is one of the biggest blind spots in modern medicine. We get so focused on the thing we can see, the nodule, the lump, the mass, that we completely forget about the environment it grew in. We treat the fruit, but we ignore the roots. We focus on the effect, but we never ask why it happened in the first place. And that's why I tell my patients, many people aren't actually dying from their disease. They're being scared to death by the diagnosis, or they're being harmed by misinformation, by fear, by not understanding what's actually going on inside their own bodies. And that's not their fault. Our healthcare system is complicated, and doctors don't always have the time to explain things the way they should. Today, I want to clear all of that up for you. I want to explain in plain, simple English why these things grow in the first place, why you and not your neighbor or your coworker or your sister. And I want to give you hope, because once you understand the basic principle behind this, you'll see that these nodules, these lumps, these growths, they're not some mysterious, unstoppable invader that you have no control over. They're really more like buildup, like stagnant sludge or little ice cubes in a body that was meant to be warm, flowing, and alive. And once you understand that, you'll realize you have way more control than you think. You don't always need surgery. You don't always need harsh medications with long lists of side effects. You can start cleaning up that internal environment yourself, and your body will do what it does best: heal. But first, we have to understand the core question. Why do we get nodules in the first place? If you ask a conventional Western trained doctor, they'll give you the standard answers. They'll talk about hormones, genetics, environmental toxins, or just plain bad luck. And those things aren't wrong. They're just incomplete. Those are the things you can see under a microscope. Those are the results, the effects. They're not the root cause. Now, I want you to think about something with me for a second. Imagine it's the middle of winter. It's freezing outside, well below freezing. You pour a glass of water onto the pavement. What happens? It turns into ice, hard, solid, stuck, completely immobile. That ice is exactly like your nodule. Now imagine it's the middle of summer. It's 100 degrees outside, hot and sunny. You pour that same glass of water on the ground. What happens? It evaporates. It turns into steam. It rises, it disappears into the air. It's flowing, it's moving, it's alive, it's the same water, but in a completely different environment. Your body is about 70% water. If your internal environment is warm, if that inner sun, your core energy, your circulation, your metabolic warmth is strong and active, that water flows freely. It nourishes your organs, it hydrates your tissues, it carries nutrients where they need to go, and it carries waste products out of your system. But if that inner sun is weak, if your body starts to feel more like a freezer than a warm, living ecosystem, that water slows down, it stagnates. It gets sluggish, and wherever it stops flowing, stuff starts to accumulate. In the breast, that's a breast nodule. In the thyroid, that's a thyroid nodule. In the lungs, that's a lung nodule. In the uterus, that's a fibroid. So in a very real sense, A nodule is a sign that your internal environment has become cold, damp, and sluggish. It's not about having a bad body, it's about your body telling you in the only language it has that the environment isn't right. It's about not having enough warmth and energy to keep things moving the way they should. And this is why I always tell my patients, don't obsess over the nodule itself. Don't measure it with a ruler every single day. Don't let it consume your thoughts, because if you don't change the environment, you can chip away at that ice all you want, but more water is just going to flow in and freeze again. Surgery, in many cases, is just chipping at the ice. It doesn't turn up the thermostat. It doesn't fix the soil. And that's why so many people have recurrences, or they end up with new nodules in new places. The problem wasn't the nodule, the problem was the environment that created the nodule. So the real question is, what kind of person tends to turn their body into that freezer? What habits, what patterns, what lifestyle choices create this environment where things stagnate and accumulate? I'm going to share 3 major patterns with you. And I want you to be really honest with yourself as I go through them. See if any of these sound familiar. If they do, please don't feel bad. This isn't about judgment. It's about understanding so you can take the next step. Pattern number 1. You're a bottler upper, you get angry, you worry, you hold grudges, you carry stress, you feel hurt, and you keep it all inside. You don't let it out. You don't express it. You just swallow it and move on with your day. There's a very old saying that all disease starts with emotion. And I think there's a lot of truth to that. The connection between your mind and your body is real, and it's powerful, especially for women who are statistically much more likely to develop thyroid and breast nodules. And it's not because women are weaker, it's because women often carry a heavier emotional and relational load. Think about it for a moment. You're managing the kids, the house, the career, the aging parents, the relationships with your partner, your friends, your coworkers. You're supposed to do it all, and you're supposed to do it with a smile. And when you're upset or hurt or frustrated or angry, or when you want to scream but you can't, when you feel like you have to be strong for everyone else, that energy doesn't just disappear. It goes somewhere. It gets stored in your body. Your body has a traffic system, energy, blood, and fluids are supposed to flow smoothly like cars on a highway. When you get stressed, when you hold in anger or resentment, it's like a pileup on the interstate. Everything backs up, traffic comes to a standstill. And when that backlog affects your liver energy, which in traditional medicine is the system in charge of keeping that traffic moving and smooth, everything gets blocked. Blood stops flowing properly, fluids stop moving, and over time, that stagnation, that buildup creates a physical lump. I had a patient once who really illustrated this perfectly. She was a woman in her mid-40s, a corporate executive, very successful, very sharp, very driven, very much in control of everything in her life. She came to me because she had a breast nodule on both sides. The largest one was about the size of a walnut, hard, fixed in place, and her surgeon was pushing for surgery immediately. She was terrified. She couldn't sleep. She was convinced it was cancer. She came to me for a second opinion, and when I examined her and took her pulse, it was as tight and tense as a guitar string pulled to its absolute limit. I could feel the tension radiating through her whole body, so I asked her very gently, has life been really hard for you lately? And she just broke down. She started crying right there in my office. Big heaving sobs that she'd clearly been holding in for a long time. She told me her company was in the middle of an IPO. She was working 18-hour days. She was constantly fighting with her partners. Her husband didn't understand the pressure she was under, and she felt like she had a boulder sitting on her chest 24 hours a day, every single day. And I said, that's it, that's your root cause. Her emotional boulder, the stress and frustration and anger she had been carrying for years, had manifested as a physical one, and until we addressed that, until we helped her release that burden, we could treat the nodule all we wanted with surgery or medications, but it was going to keep coming back. The body was just responding to the environment she had been living in. So pattern number 1 is clear suppressed emotion. Chronic, unrelenting stress and holding on to anger or resentment is a direct pathway to stagnation and growths. It's not just a metaphor, it's a real physical process that happens in your tissues. Pattern number 2, you love the ice cold life. I'm talking about ice lots, cold sodas, ice water all day long, cranking the air conditioning down to 65 degrees in the middle of July, and thinking that a big bowl of raw salad with cold dressing is the healthiest thing you can possibly eat. Now, I have to be really direct about this one because I see it everywhere. I see people walking around with iced coffee in the middle of winter. I see families sitting in restaurants with the AC blasting so hard they're shivering while they eat. I see moms filling their kids' lunchboxes with cold yogurt, cold cheese sticks, and ice cold juice boxes. And I think we have really lost touch with how much this matters for our health. Your digestive system is not a blender. It doesn't work well on cold to process cold food and cold drinks. Your body has to expend a massive amount of energy just to warm them up to body temperature. That energy is supposed to be used for healing, for repairing tissues, for circulating blood, for fighting inflammation, for keeping your immune system strong. Instead, it gets wasted on heating up a smoothie or a glass of ice water. And when you drink that ice cold beverage, especially with or right after a meal, you're basically throwing a bucket of ice water on your internal fire. Your heart is the engine of your whole body. When that engine has to work overtime just to warm you up, it gets tired, circulation slows down. Blood becomes thicker and more sluggish, and all those fats, cholesterol, and metabolic waste products that are supposed to be carried away and processed by your body, they start depositing, they stick to your artery walls, and that's plaque, they stick to your tissues, and that's a nodule for women. This is especially important because of the menstrual cycle. In traditional medicine, there's a concept that breast milk and menstrual blood are essentially the same nourishing fluid, transformed in different ways depending on what your body needs. A strong internal warmth is absolutely necessary to move that fluid properly. If you're always cold, if you're always chilling yourself from the inside out, that process gets disrupted. The fluid that should flow downward and become a period stays stuck in the breast tissue, and over time, it congeals, thickens, and becomes a lump. And I see this pattern all the time. Women who drink iced coffee every morning, who eat cold cereal with cold milk, who snack on frozen yogurt, who wear thin clothes in a freezing office, who eat salads with cold dressing for lunch, those are the women who come to me with painful periods, cold hands and feet, and breast nodules. It's not a coincidence, it's a pattern. So pattern number 2 is clear, too much cold, too little warmth, and a diet that forces your body to constantly play catch up just to maintain a normal internal temperature. And when your body is spending all its energy on staying warm, it has nothing left for healing. Pattern number 3, you're a night owl. You stay up late, you scroll on your phone until midnight or later, you watch television, you play video games, you answer emails at 11 o'clock at night, you think you're relaxing and unwinding after a long day. But what you're really doing is depleting your body's deepest reserves. Your body has a rhythm, it's not random. It evolved over millions of years to follow the sun. The hours between 11 p.m. and 3 a.m. are when your body goes into its deepest repair mode. That's when your blood returns to your liver to be cleansed and refreshed. That's when your nervous system resets. That's when your immune system does its most important work. That's when your body heals. But if you're awake staring at a bright screen, your blood is up in your head, it can't get back to the liver to be cleansed, your nervous system stays active, your immune system can't do its repair work, and over time this creates what I call a false heat. You feel hot, irritable, stressed out, but your core is actually cold and depleted. Your body is burning through its reserves just to keep you awake, and that false heat doesn't help you. It doesn't help you digest food. It doesn't help you clear out waste. Instead, it just dries up your fluids and turns them into thick, sticky phlegm, and that phlegm, sitting in your tissues day after day, month after month, can become a nodule. I've seen this in so many patients, the ones who work night shifts, the ones who can't put their phones down, the ones who feel like they never get enough rest. They're the ones who come in with nodules that seem to grow faster, that are harder to treat, that keep coming back even after surgery. Their bodies just don't have the resources to heal. So let me ask you again, how many of these boxes did you check off? 1, 2, all 3. If you're nodding your head right now, please don't panic. This isn't about blame. It's not about making you feel guilty. It's about awareness. It's about understanding that you have the power to change these patterns. And that's a good thing, because if you have the power to create the environment, you also have the power to change it. Now, since we're talking about cleaning up this internal environment, I want to talk about 2 specific things that can really fuel the problem. The real triggers, the things that if you have a nodule or a tendency toward nodules, you really should think twice about. And here's the surprise, it's not what most people think. Most people hear trigger foods and they think of shellfish or spicy food or red meat or alcohol, but for a person with a nodule tendency, the real triggers are actually different, and they might surprise you. Trigger number 1, milk and all dairy products and refined sugary treats. I know this is controversial. I know dairy is heavily marketed as a health food. You've seen the commercials with the happy cows and the strong bones, but let's be really honest with ourselves. Cow's milk is designed for a calf. A baby cow has 4 stomachs, and it's meant to gain about 800 pounds in its first year. Human milk is completely different. And for many adults, especially those who didn't grow up in a dairy-heavy culture, cow's milk is a cold, heavy, mucus-forming food that's very difficult to digest. When you have a weak digestive system, consuming dairy is like putting a wet, heavy blanket on your internal fire. It creates dampness, it creates phlegm, and it creates stagnation. And all of those things are exactly the conditions that nodules love to grow in. And sugar, refined processed sugar, is even worse. It's stripped of all nutrition, it creates a huge acid load in the body, and it spikes your blood sugar. But here's the really scary part that people don't talk about enough. Cancer cells and tumors love sugar. They thrive on it. They use it as fuel. They need it to grow. Eating a lot of refined sugar is like pouring fertilizer on a weed. If you have a nodule, you don't want to be feeding it, you want to starve it. So I tell my patients, if you have any kind of nodule, fibroid, or growth, start by cutting out milk, cheese, yogurt, ice cream, and any dessert that comes in a package or a wrapper. Just give yourself 30 days without dairy and refined sugar and see how you feel. Most of my patients notice a huge difference: less bloating, less tenderness in their breasts, more energy, better sleep, and often a reduction in the size of their nodules. Trigger number 2, raw salads and excessive fruit, especially cold fruit. There's a big health trend right now that says you should eat as many raw vegetables as possible, and I get it, vegetables are good for you. They're full of vitamins and fiber, but here's the thing for many people, especially those with a cold, stagnant body type: eating a huge raw salad is a digestive nightmare. To process all that raw fiber and cellulose, your body has to use a massive amount of energy that it doesn't have to spare. It's like trying to burn a wet log in a fireplace. You throw it on the fire, and instead of making the fire bigger, it just smothers it. You end up with smoke and ashes and a fire that's about to go out, and that wet log in your stomach turns into gas, bloating, and undigested food that just sits there and ferments. And the same goes for fruit. Many fruits, especially tropical ones like watermelon, dragon fruit, mango, papaya, and kiwi, are very cooling to the body. If your body is already like a freezer, eating cold fruit is just adding more ice to the system. It's not helping, it's making things worse. I had a patient once who was eating a huge fruit smoothie every single morning, thinking she was doing something incredibly healthy for herself, but she had terrible bloating, cold hands and feet, low energy, and a growing thyroid nodule that just wouldn't stop getting bigger. I told her to stop the smoothies, switch to warm oatmeal with some cooked apples and cinnamon, and within 2 months her nodule had stopped growing and started shrinking. She also had more energy, her digestion improved, and she slept better. She was shocked. She thought she was being so healthy, but her body was telling her a different story. So if you have a nodule, or if you tend to run cold, if your hands and feet are always chilly, if you have digestive issues, if you feel tired all the time, if you get bloated after meals, you might want to cut back on raw salads and cold fruit. And if you really want fruit, cook it, bake an apple with some cinnamon. Stew some pears, make a warm fruit compote that takes the chill off and makes it much easier for your body to digest and absorb the nutrients. And one more thing that I really have to mention, because it's so common in our culture: supplements and vitamins. There's a belief in our culture that if one vitamin is good, a handful of vitamins is better. And I see people spending hundreds of dollars a month on supplements thinking they're doing the right thing, but that's not how your body works. A synthetic vitamin C pill is not the same as eating an orange. An orange is a living whole food that your body recognizes and knows exactly how to process. It's a complete package of nutrients, fiber, water, and enzymes that work together in a way that science still doesn't fully understand. A chemical pill is a foreign substance to your body. Your body has to work hard to process it, and if you can't absorb it properly, it just becomes another waste product that your liver and kidneys have to deal with. And here's the worst part: some high-dose supplements can actually feed the wrong things. Cancer cells, for example, are hungry for nutrients. They're greedy. They don't have the same checks and balances that healthy cells have. If you flood your system with high-dose, concentrated nutrients that your body can't absorb properly, those rogue cells may feast on them and grow faster. So I always tell my patients, get your nutrients from real food, not from a bottle. Eat a varied diet of whole foods that are cooked properly and prepared with care. Your body is smarter than you think. It knows how to extract what it needs from whole foods. So now you might be saying, okay, doctor, I get the general idea, but I have a thyroid nodule. My best friend has a breast nodule. My neighbor has something called a ground glass opacity in her lung. Are you telling me it's all the same thing? In principle, yes, the location changes the name, but the root cause is very often the same: a cold, damp, stagnant environment where things are not flowing the way they should. Let me break it down for you one by one, so you can understand what's happening in your specific case. First, let's talk about thyroid nodules. Why is this so incredibly common now? If you ask a conventional doctor, they'll talk about iodine deficiency, radiation exposure, or genetics, but when you look deeper, it's very often related to your heart energy. Your thyroid sits right at your throat, which is a major energy center in your body. It's like a chimney for your heart's warmth. If your heart's energy is strong and healthy, that warmth rises and circulates through your whole body. But if your heart's energy is weak, or if your emotions are blocked and stuck, especially anger, grief, resentment, or frustration that you've been holding on to for years, that heat gets trapped instead of circulating down to your belly and your limbs. It just sits there in your neck, overheating the tissues, drying up your fluids, and turning them into a hard lump. And the thyroid is very sensitive to stress. If you're constantly under pressure, if you feel like you can't express yourself, if you feel like you're swallowing your words and your feelings, that tension accumulates right in that area. And over time, it becomes a physical lump. I had a patient once who really showed me this clearly. She was a school teacher in her 50s. She came to me with a nodule on each side of her neck. They were big enough to see like two little eggs right at the front of her throat. Her surgeon was ready to operate immediately because of the risk of cancer, and she was terrified. But when I examined her, I noticed something interesting. Her hands were ice cold, but her forehead was burning hot. That's a classic sign of heat stuck in the upper body, with cold and stagnation in the lower body. Her energy wasn't circulating, it was trapped, and when I asked her about her life, she told me she had spent 20 years teaching in a tough, challenging school. She loved her students, but she was constantly frustrated with the administration. She wanted to yell at her principal and her superintendent, but she never could. She said, "Doctor, it feels like I've had a lump in my throat for 2 decades." And that right there was her root cause, that trapped energy. That swallowed anger and frustration had literally solidified in her throat. It wasn't just a metaphor, it was a physical reality. Now let's talk about breast nodules, because this is something that scares so many women, and for very good reason. Breast health is deeply personal and deeply emotional, and women are right to be concerned about it. Conventional medicine focuses on early detection, which is absolutely important. I fully support mammograms and regular checkups, but I also want to talk about prevention, about what you can do to create an environment where nodules don't grow in the first place. Here's the thing, in traditional medicine, there's a concept that the same nourishing fluid that becomes breast milk when a woman is not pregnant or nursing should flow downward and become menstrual blood. If that flow is blocked by stress, by cold, by emotional stagnation, the fluid stays in the breast tissue. And over time, it congeals, thickens, and becomes a nodule. So the key to healthy breast tissue is healthy circulation, healthy emotional flow, and a strong internal warmth that keeps everything moving. When your circulation is good, when you're not emotionally blocked, when your internal environment is warm and active, that fluid flows downward the way it's supposed to, and your breasts stay clear and healthy. Now, I want to say something really important about biopsies, because this is a topic that comes up all the time and it's often misunderstood. I'm not saying no one should ever have a biopsy, but I want you to understand something about how your body works. Your body is incredibly wise. When it detects a suspicious mass, it often wraps it in a fibrous capsule, a little prison basically, to keep it contained and prevent it from spreading to other parts of your body. That's a protective mechanism. It's your body saying, "I don't know what this is, but I'm going to isolate it and keep it away from the rest of the system." When you do a needle biopsy, you're literally poking a hole in that prison wall. If those cells are cancerous, you might inadvertently release them into the surrounding tissue, and from there, they can travel through your bloodstream or lymphatic system to other parts of your body. I have personally seen cases where a small, stable nodule that had been unchanged for years suddenly grew rapidly after a biopsy. It's not that the biopsy caused the cancer, it's that the biopsy allowed it to escape its natural containment. That doesn't mean biopsies are always bad. They're a valuable tool in the right situation, but they are not without risks, and they are not always necessary. You should always ask questions. You should weigh the risks and benefits with your doctor, and you should always consider whether there are steps you can take to shrink that nodule before you decide to biopsy it. Sometimes simply changing your diet, reducing stress, and warming up your body can make a huge difference. Now let's talk about lung nodules. These are incredibly common now because we do so many CT scans. A ground glass opacity, that's the scary medical term, is a small area of haziness in the lung that shows up on a scan. And for most people, it's benign, but it's still scary because we all know someone who was diagnosed with lung cancer. From a traditional perspective, the lungs are very delicate organs. They don't like cold and they don't like dryness. They like warmth and moisture, just like the air we breathe on a spring morning. And they absolutely don't like unresolved grief or sadness. Emotions like sadness can make your lung energy contract, which slows down circulation and creates phlegm. And if that phlegm sits in the lungs long enough, month after month, it can form a nodule. So if you have a lung nodule, I want you to ask yourself some honest questions. Have I been carrying grief? Have I been holding on to sadness or disappointment from something that happened a long time ago? Am I breathing deeply, or am I holding my breath all day because I'm stressed or anxious? Because those things matter. They affect your lungs just as much as the air you breathe. Now, I've told you a lot about what's wrong and how it happens, but I don't want to leave you without something practical, something you can actually do starting today to help yourself. I want to share a simple, gentle tea recipe that I recommend to many of my patients. This isn't a magic cure, and it's not a substitute for medical care, but it's a wonderful, safe, and effective way to support your body's own healing process. Here's what you need: aged tangerine peel. You can find this in many Asian grocery stores or online. Fresh ginger and dried rosebuds. Why these three things? Let me explain. Aged tangerine peel is wonderful for breaking up stagnation. It helps your body clear out phlegm, move stuck energy, and get things flowing again. It's like a gentle massage for your internal organs. Fresh ginger is warming. It gets your circulation going. It warms you from the inside out. And it's a natural anti-inflammatory. It's one of the most powerful and safest warming herbs you can find. Dried rosebuds are fantastic for releasing emotional tension, especially the kind of bottling up and suppressed emotions we talked about earlier. They help your emotions flow. They have a gentle, uplifting energy that can actually make you feel calmer and more at ease. Here's how you make the tea. Every morning, put a small piece of aged tangerine peel, about 3 slices of fresh ginger, and a small pinch of dried rosebuds into a thermos or a large mug. Fill it with boiling hot water. Let it steep for about 10 minutes and then sip it throughout the day. Drink it warm, sip it slowly. And as you sip, take a few deep breaths and try to relax. This isn't just about the herbs, it's about the ritual of taking care of yourself. And if you want to be more specific, depending on the location of your nodule, you can add other herbs to this base recipe for a thyroid nodule because it's located in your neck, which is a major energy hub. You can add a little bit of self-heal, which is also called Prunella vulgaris. It's traditionally used to help calm the thyroid area and break down lumps in the neck. It's a very gentle but effective herb for a breast nodule, especially if you have tenderness or pain. You can add some loofah gourd fiber. It's the dried fibrous part of a mature gourd, and it's traditionally used to help unblock the breast ducts and improve lymphatic drainage in the chest area for a lung nodule. Especially if you have a lot of phlegm or a chronic cough, you can add some dried citrus peel or monk fruit, which helps dry up that excess moisture and clear the lungs for a uterine fibroid, especially if you have cold hands and feet or painful periods. You can add a little bit of cinnamon twig or mugwort, which are warming herbs that help improve circulation to the pelvic areas. But the tea is just one part of the equation. I also want you to do something physical. I always tell my patients to do what I call the back bounce. Find an empty wall in your house, stand about half a foot away from it, and gently lean back so your shoulder blades touch the wall. Then just lightly bounce your back against the wall. Gently and rhythmically for about 2 or 3 minutes every day. Why? Because your spine and your back are where a lot of your body's energy channels and nerve pathways run. That gentle bouncing motion shakes up your internal organs, gets your blood and lymph moving, and helps break up stagnation. It's like giving your internal organs a gentle massage. It also stimulates your spine, which is the communication highway between your brain and your body. If your spine is stiff, your circulation and nerve function can become sluggish. You can also do what I call tapping the 8 hollows. These are the places where your body's lymphatic system is most concentrated: your armpits, the inside of your elbows, your groin area, and the backs of your knees. Gently tap each of these areas with your fingertips for about 30 seconds once or twice a day. This helps move your lymphatic fluid, which is basically your body's sewer system and flushes out metabolic waste and toxins. It's simple, it's free, and it's incredibly effective. And finally, I want to talk about the most powerful treatment of all, the one that doesn't cost a penny and has no side effects whatsoever: letting go. This is the ultimate secret to healing. I see it over and over again in my practice. The patients who get better are not always the ones who take the most pills or follow the most restrictive diets. They're the ones who learn to release their emotional baggage. They're the ones who learn to let go of the things that no longer serve them. Look at your life. What are you holding on to? What anger are you replaying in your head like a broken record? What argument happened 5 years ago that you still feel in your chest every time you think about it? What worry do you carry around like a brick in your pocket every single day that is toxic? That is what's turning into those lumps in your body. It's not just a metaphor, it's a real physical process. So I want you to practice something starting today. Learn to laugh things off. Learn to say no. Learn to be okay with things not being perfect. Learn to let other people carry their own problems. When you release that mental and emotional burden, you are literally lifting a weight off your body, and that gives your internal fire the space it needs to burn bright and strong. Melting away all the stagnation, all the buildup, all the lumps, a warm heart, a clear mind, and a calm spirit, that's the best medicine you can give yourself. Let me leave you with a story that really stuck with me because it shows you just how powerful this approach can be. I had a patient, a 72-year-old woman from a Western country. She came to my clinic in a wheelchair, pushed by her daughter. She had been diagnosed with multiple autoimmune conditions, lupus, rheumatoid arthritis, and a complicated thyroid issue that had been going on for years. She was on more than a dozen medications. She was swollen. She was in constant pain. She had trouble sleeping. She had no energy, and she had completely lost hope. She told me, "Doctor, I don't even know who I am anymore. When I looked at her chart, I thought, this woman has been through so much." Her medical history was a mile long, and every specialist she had seen had added more medications to her list. But when I talked to her, I realized that no one had ever asked her the most important questions. How is your life? What are you eating? How are you sleeping? Are you warm? Are you cold? How do you feel emotionally? So I asked her if she would trust me for just 1 month. I asked her to stop the iced drinks, stop the cold salads, stop the dairy, and switch to warm, cooked, easy to digest food. I gave her a very simple warming tea formula. I told her to go to bed earlier and to rest as much as she could. I also asked her to start that gentle back bouncing exercise every day, just a few minutes. She was terrified. She said, "If I stop my medications, I'll die. They told me I need these to survive." And I said, "You're barely living right now. You're surviving, but you're not living. Just give me 1 month. You can always go back to your old routine. You have nothing to lose." 1 month later, she walked into my clinic. She had left her wheelchair by the front door. She walked right in, sat down in the chair across from me, and looked me in the eye. She hugged me and she cried, but they were happy tears this time. She said, "Doctor, I haven't felt warmth in my hands and feet for 20 years. I feel like a human being again. I slept through the night for the first time in years. I have energy. I don't feel like I'm dying anymore." She went on to live well into her 90s. She still had some nodules, some scars from her past, but they never hurt her. They never caused a problem. She learned to live in harmony with her body. She learned to listen to what her body was telling her, and that right there is the goal. We don't always have to cut, burn, or poison our way to health. Sometimes we just need to turn up the warmth, get things moving, and let go of the things that no longer serve us. Sometimes the most powerful medicine is simply giving your body what it needs to heal itself. If you found this helpful, please share it with someone you care about. And drop a comment if you're going to try that tea routine. I'd love to hear how it works for you. Your experience might help someone else who's going through the same thing. And remember, this is for educational purposes only. Always consult your own doctor before making any changes to your diet, your lifestyle, or your medications. If you're dealing with any health concerns, please schedule a visit with your primary care doctor. I'm here to help you understand the science and the tradition, not to replace professional medical advice. Start with one small change today, just one. Your body will thank you. I've seen it happen thousands of times. I'll see you in the next video. Take care of yourself. Bye for now.